What is up, guys? Aniki here. All right, so as you can tell, I'm in a different spot. I'm currently cat sitting. I'm petting my little cat nephew here, Apollo, off to the side. Here, let me just bring him into the camera real quick. Hey, Apollo, say what's up to everybody, or don't. It's up to you, really. Uh, but today we're covering chapter 233. This guy, okay, yeah, good. He's gonna behave. I was a little worried he was gonna meow a lot throughout the entire video, and that would have it would have been very disruptive, but I also think that as far as like memeage goes, you guys probably would have had mileage out of that. So I'm just gonna dive right into the dissection though, especially because I forgot my laptop charger and I do not want to risk this shutting down and me losing all of my recording. So one of the first things that we want to talk about now is that in the beginning we instantly cut back to Twice and Toga, and the thing that is most fascinating about this is that Twice says, I have never gotten to measure you. Now, if you think about it, this makes a lot of sense actually, because some people are like, well, Twice made a clone before. The thing is that the clone of Toga that Twice made back during the overhaul arc was extremely fragile. It dispersed after one punch in the face from Lockrock, who is not one of the top 10 heroes. He's not one of the, like the most famous ones. He doesn't have a strength enhancing quirk. Just it was just a straight left. It was a left straight, and she was dispersed. And the reason for that is now explained. Her clone was not very durable due to the fact that Twice didn't have a lot of information on her. This can also be further verified because if you think about it, he probably did have measurements on Dobby, and that explains why the Dobby clone could have two of his arms broken and get kneed in the face and still exist for a while. Oh, here he is. This is my cat nephew, Apollo, everyone. Uh, so, with that covered, though, I think it does bring a little clarity and understanding to previous interactions and explains what happened with Twice's clones earlier in the series. I think that's a nice little touch, and we see that also you can take genetic material from clones. This is one of the things that I had been thinking about is that in order for a high end to exist with Muscular's quirk, is it possible that Twice would have cloned other members of the League of Villains when they first started, and All for One might have taken some of those quirks and used them and dispersed them into other Nomu? This also means that, given time, there's a chance that we could get a Dobby high end where you get like a small child, you manipulate it genetically, you take a Dobby clone, you rip the quirk data from that, and then you have a high end with high regenerative powers, but also the cremation quirk, as many of us have decided is Dobby's quirk effectively. Um, so, of course, then we get further information that Twice's data, which I think I talked about, is based upon the last time Twice has seen you when he decides to make your doppelganger. So the Toga clone is weak. The Mr. Compress had one hand. Everybody looked a little scruffy, but like those clones, because the clones hadn't seen anyone yet, it was based on their last interactions with, the members of the league. Uh, Twice himself gets to update regularly, but he does have preference over what he creates of himself because, as stated previously, nobody knows Twice better than Twice. And I think that's an excellent point to make. We get, hey buddy, we get the arrival of Mr. Feelgood Inc. himself, and he is fully tilted. He's just, when you read the viz, he just yells, I didn't fail, like 6 times in a row. He's tapping cars and motorcycles and everything as he just walks towards him, turning everything into a puppet, which, he's basically spamming the same number of puppets as Twice clones. He's really trying to make sure that he gets to capture him. They really, really want Twice for his ability because of his quirk. It is very potent. The thing about that is that he thinks that Twice will be even more useful to the MLA now that he's fixed himself or overcome his issues. But in reality, I think that hurts the MLA because the conviction that Twice has towards his friends is genuinely typical shonen protagonist type dedication to his allies. And when you factor it in from that angle, there's pretty much no rational way I can justify Twice ever willingly working for the MLA, especially if they kill all of his friends. We get Spinner. We do finally have the Spinner versus Hanabata showdown confirmed. What that does bring to question, though, bring to mind, is what is Mr. Compress going to be doing? Is he just going to be on fodder duty for the rest of the arc? Is he, he's been working as an advisor, giving us, to a certain extent, even though Spinner's been narrating the conflict, Mr. Compress has kind of worked as the narrative focal point for us as the readers to see how things are going down and to interact and analyze the events through the eyes of somebody who doesn't necessarily know what's going on or but is like trying his best to keep up and not get caught up, completely lost in the fray of the chaos. Ooh. Oh, okay, you're good. Yeah, this cat never bites anyway. I don't know why I was surprised. Um, and so we get Spinner. The thing that I like about this is that we now understand that Spinner does, in fact, have his convictions set on the League of Villains. A lot of people were questioning whether he would defect, whether he would join the MLA, and it seems to be that no, that is not the case. Spinner has fully dedicated himself to not only the League, but specifically Shigaraki. And one of the things that I think is nice about this is that his personality and his quirk makes sense. Spinner being like an emptier person, a person with less of his own ambition and his own uniqueness brought to him outside of his aesthetics, he clings to walls. And in the same way he clings to walls, he clings to other people. Hanabata being a politician who's supposed to stir the people, his quirk is to, move the masses. And Spinner himself says that both of our quirks aren't that impressive, actually. When you think about what he's saying to him, when he says, we're not that different, all these people that are in your army are just clinging to the ideals of another person because they don't feel validity in their own lives. He is correct. He's calling them out on the fact that there's a certain level of hypocrisy that needs to be taken in order to call Spinner out and say that he's so mediocre just because he's chasing other people's ideals, when the reality is many of us don't have much to ourselves that we hold as truly our own. And so this is actually an important, dialogue bit and commentary on the way like people often lack self-awareness. Hanabata himself, while he may be a politician, while he may have his own ambitions, at the end of the day, he's just a man regurgitating the words of a book that he read and following Redestro, which is again like the kind of commentary on like the way that a lot of people or like a lot of priests get bigger than their own heads and they don't realize who they are. So again, the functioning bishop of the Meta Liberation Army is Hanabata. And we get his code name, which is Trumpet, furthering the religious symbolism. He is Gabriel, the man who blows angel who blows the trumpet, heralding the end. In the same way, when he puts on the seventh loud mask, he amps everybody up, potentially endangering their lives. I think that it is going to be a downside to his meta ability, that when he amps people up, it does push them beyond their limits, similar to how Midoriya was injured because of the whole adrenaline factor, going beyond your limits because your brain is like, yeah, danger, let's go. And so I think that's basically what he's talking about when he says that there's a downside to it. And, so he's a support player. And that's something that Spinner makes it a point to call out. You are a support player. You should not be on the front lines. This is the exact same thing that got Curious killed. It's the exact same thing that might get Mr. Feelgood Inc. killed. The only person in their group that's actually a front liner is Geten. And then you also have Redestro, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. Because his quirk is so thematically on the nose that it's kind of hilarious. And I guess some people did not guess his quirk, but your boy did. And anybody who's been following my channel for like the past, 2.5 months that I've been doing videos, and knows that I did call this. I did, I was pointing out the signs, the Rorschach test, the fact that he was consistently getting panels expressing emotions zeroed in. Constant face shots of him crying, to him being upset or angry, and every time he got angry, you notice that like the marks would start to appear because that stress, that buildup was leaking out. Spinner, I think, as soon as he gets to Hanabata is dead. Spinner might not have anything necessarily impressive, but that's the thing that I think is most important about his character at this point. He's a dude that is going to be strong because of the fact that he's going to fight, having to train his body in the same way that while Aizawa's quirk does erase your abilities, when you saw him fight the Nomu, it didn't stop him getting his arm snapped if the thing was just too swole. And that's the thing, is that like Spinner has a quirk where yes, he can get the drop on you because he clung to a wall and assassinate you that way. I would love to see more drop attacks from Spinner, that kind of thing going forward. And even his backstory was essentially he just hid in his house and played video games and was radicalized by Stain, and just decided he would follow the path of like whatever he thought would take him to the top. And the idea of ultimately the reason why Shigaraki wants to destroy things is because of the fact that he feels neglected by society, and that's finally something that Spinner is resonating with. And to have these people come after him his whole life, he's just kind of like, screw it, yeah, I'm here now. I am down for this cause. I'm riding out. And that's something that I think is important. Now, that's why at the beginning of the arc, when Spinner said the beginning of the end, the destruction of the League of Villains was incoming, I did not believe that the League of Villains was going to die necessarily, though it does seem a little more possible. I thought that the cheap League of Villains name, as they were described by All For One himself, may start to fade away and they become something new, something refreshing. I recently got a tarot reading done on myself and I learned about some of the cards and what they indicate. And the death card in tarot readings does not symbolize actual death or dying, but rather the end of an era or a change of a cycle. So in this case, or the beginning of something new. So the death of the League of Villains being, in tarot sense, the rise of something different. Maybe what Horikoshi was going for, not a literal one-to-one scaling of the League of Villains is going to die. Something to keep in mind, especially because artists pull from many things, and he's already pulled from Western thoughts and schools, with the Catholicism parallels, and pulling the tarot just makes sense. That's a part of our Western culture, and that's something that I think a lot of the mysticism, especially because it would be the League of Villains being the mysticist going against the Catholic Church or the Meta Liberation Army in this scenario. So Hanabata himself feels like they are definitively superior, and I personally actually don't agree with that. I actually think that Spinner was on the nose. He called him out, said, you think that just because you have these, all this extra, money and clout is essentially is what this boils down to, is that you think you're better than us. And that's why also the seventh loud mask is actually pretty banging. I'm not gonna lie, that it's a pretty good design. More Detnerat tech. They've, as much as they say that they were preparing to enter, it seems like they have either really high grade materials or kind of decent materials that are not necessarily super fancy, but the Seltzer guys, his blasters weren't the best, but they did get the job done. But here, when you look at what Chitose had, where she had a gauntlet that she could use that could withstand the strength of her explosions, so she could actually indefinitely punch people in the face with her explosive gauntlet. Here, the seventh loud mask is just this fancy high tech thing. The telecommunications satellites and the tracking chips that Feel Good had allowed him to manipulate puppets from afar, even though now he's just on the field going at it. Now, when we get to Reed Destro and the Shigaraki interactions, there's a couple of things that I want to point out, because I was talking to some people on Discord, and they were kind of unhappy with Reed Destro's quirk. Now, as I said earlier in this, it's actually the perfect quirk for what this character is about and who he is. The thing is that Reed Destro's quirk, like many characters' quirks, is actually right on the nose for who they are as a person. Now, if you look at Stain was a character who had a lot of fear, a lot of fear-inducing powers. He had a lot of presence, and the thing was is that he would use his blades to lick your blood. But the thing is that not only was Stain paralyzing in the sense that he could get you with his quirk, but also his very presence could cause people to freeze up in fear. The idea that he embodied something that could not only hurt you but also just completely shut you down, and that's why his quirk, being paralysis based, made sense. His very presence could cause fear. His very presence could stop you in your tracks. Now, when you look at Shigaraki, whose quirk is to destroy or to decay anything that he touches, he's the man that wants to destroy everything. So anything he puts his hands on, the intent is to destroy it. So by wrapping his hands around the world itself, he plans to destroy it all. All for one, and a selfish man who shows up in a business suit, very mirroring of elite CEOs who simply want to take over other businesses, take over other franchises, take other things that people have, resources. He takes people's quirks. All these quirks are very on the nose. Now, the thing about Redestro is that his quirk, being the Rorschach blot, to the fact that he has his hair design where he's balding. The thing about Redestro is the stress stockpiling. This is a direct nod to the fact that he is a repressed person. Society, he's constantly talking about the way that they are not liberated. They do not live freely. When you have a quirk that if you get so much as upset, marks appear on you, or your arm gets bigger, or something like that, people don't want to see that. He's a person with a quirk that consistently changes his appearance, not into something desirable. So he doesn't necessarily look the coolest, right? But that's kind of the point, is that he's essentially the monster that society more or less kind of treats quirks like they breed anyway. If you have a quirk, don't use it. It's kind of monstrous. It's a huge liability. And so by Redestro having this quirk that's based on him repressing himself, him holding his own emotions in, he mirrors the very society that he is railing against. That's the whole point of him saying that these emotions are useless, they bog you down. There's a certain level of hypocrisy, if you remember, I said to his words when I believed that this would be his quirk. And so the more repressed and like the less repressed he is, the bigger he gets. The more anger he lets out, the bigger, the stronger. The more free he becomes, the more powerful he becomes. So the emotional liberation leads to his power increasing. He wants to be the freest man he can be, and in the process, he might not look like, a normal person anymore. But in a free society, he would be allowed to do that. He would be allowed to be this borderline hideous beast, and that wouldn't matter. Now, Shigaraki, as usual, dropping some heavy gems on him. Like, he's dropping knowledge here. He kind of calls him out. He's like, how do you feel about this? You dragged us all the way out here. You made it a point to like look down on us. You thought with your thousands of people you would kill us. You thought that your organization was better, more superior. You thought you had everything over us, only for us to kill like many of your soldiers to destroy your tower. You wanted to look down on us, and now I've taken you down to my level. Think about that. Shigaraki does not go up to the tower. He does not climb the tower. He brings and destroys the tower and brings Redestro down here and says, all right, I traveled to Deka City. You can come down the express elevator to me. Sure, he thought he was going to die, or at least he hoped he would, but the fact that he didn't, whatever. Come here. You're on the same level as me now. You're fighting me one-on-one head up. You're not going to get to sit in this ivory throne and watch me as I like deal with your fodder, which, I mean, if we're being honest, he was dismantling them quite literally anyway. Um, Something that was like interesting though is that in the panel where Shigaraki touches the ground, he dissolves his own shoes, I believe. I don't think that's Giron's foot that we see. I think Shigaraki started to accidentally crumble his own shoes. And one of the things that I was saying, and I said after, we got sleepy, was that I don't think Shigaraki's quirk is actually that he needs all five fingers to touch you. Especially when you look at how fast he was moving and the way that his hand kind of just like ripped through that guy's face. I personally still believe that Shigaraki has been emotionally repressing himself, which has been one of the main themes of this arc, and not properly using his quirk. Because of the fact that he touching his dog and touching his family members accidentally killed him and caused him to decay that way, I think he mentally like capped himself at, if I touch it with all of my fingers, it gets destroyed. The twist that this adds to it is that later in the chapter, when Redestro goes to attack him, he loses multiple fingers, or at least it kind of looks like it. And he's bleeding, and like one of my buddies on Discord was kind of like, oh, why is Shigaraki possibly getting these like heavy nerfs when Deku just got buffed? This doesn't make sense. But if you look at it from the perspective of it's possible that his feet can do his quirk. Anywhere on his body he can release the decay from, because I think the more I see his quirk in action, the more I think it functions more like Fugo's stand, Purple Haze, from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind. And that stand, it had little capsules on its hands, and it would release them. And those would release a giant spore cloud that would essentially infect you with the virus that caused you to die within 30 seconds. I believe that Shigaraki can more or less release decay spores, and that's part of why it was able to propagate, and it's just got a limited range. But it doesn't necessarily require all five fingers, and I think that's the direction that Horikoshi is taking that quirk. It's not actually been that. And keep in mind, when Izuku Midoriya registered to go to UA, he said he didn't have a quirk, and they said very often people later in life discover different things about their abilities. So the example they used was a person thought that they were taking the water from their body and shooting it, and it turns out that they were pulling water from the air and launching it. In the same way, Shigaraki can think that he requires all five fingers because that's what his emotional state has done to him. But once he has liberated himself, he will understand that he can just decay things. That's just how he is. A popular theory that I'm seeing circulate right now is that there's a chance Shigaraki will get Overhaul's hand. One of the big issues I have with that theory, though I do think it would be fascinating if he got a hand of decay and a hand of essentially overhauling and creation, is that when Compressed took Overhaul's arm, it looked like he only got the forearm because he was specifically going for the amputation, and they just threw his hands aside afterwards. Now, they could have decided to take them. I'm not going to say they absolutely did not, but at the same time, they were not speaking to the doctor the way they are now. So for what purpose would they have taken the hand back then, outside of Horikoshi just, giving him an excuse to have the power later? or maybe Compress actually did take the entire hand and just that was clothing and like a little bit of blood that we saw. But that's just something that's the only problem I really have with that theory. It would be cool. It would be interesting to see if the Doctor could like stitch his hand on there and make it so that he could use that other quirk. But things are heating up, and the very last page is very, very what we would call spooky because at this point you've got Redestro, who's basically around max size, and he's got a hold of Shigaraki's hand, his arm, and just his fingers. And he's like, "Hey, is this the hand that you've been doing all this evil stuff with?" And that's where you get the reveal that your boy was calling it on the money. That Redestro is in fact, his meta ability is stress. But the thing that I think is fascinating, and I've talked about this before, is that no matter who wins, the villain side wins because it hurts the hero society like long term. And that you actually have Go Slide and Go standing around redirecting traffic, keeping people out, meaning that heroes are directly stopping people from getting into Deca City, and people will remember that when the story comes out of what happens here, especially with the thooms, like the big sound effects. People think it's an earthquake. I'm telling you, I told you guys, I believe that Gigantomachia is going to Hulk jump there, and that seems to be where Horikoshi is going. Like he's saying, yeah, he's almost here. He's about to pull up. And the thing about that is that we're either going to get a triple threat fight between Shigaraki, Redestro, and Gigantomachia, or essentially a kaiju battle. Excuse me, because I don't think there's anything more stressful than not only losing your city, losing multiple commanders, losing the building that your company is like based in, um, having like so many things go wrong with your plan, and then on top of that, basically having the Hulk show up in your town. So if Gigantomachia and Redestro end up fighting, we have an epic clash of giants happening. And the thing that I could see happening is that Redestro could actually beat Gigantomachia, but in the process, Shigaraki could manage to outwit him and come in the same way that he wanted to use Gigantomachia, or like the MLA to beat down Gigantomachia for the HP. He could solidify Gigantomachia's loyalty by sneaking Redestro and decaying him, beating the opponent that Gigantomachia lost to. So instead of him having to beat Machia, he beats the guy that beat Machia, still earning his respect and getting all of his pieces gathered together. Let me know what you guys thought of this chapter below. I was going to try to do a stream tonight. I forgot my laptop charger at home, so obviously that's not going to fly. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to upload this video before I get home. I really am hoping I can, and so just let me know what you guys think of this chapter, what you guys want to see. Also, the other reason why that might be okay is that because we're on break next week, there's a part of me that thinks we can do potentially a longer stream, or at least a stream next Sunday instead, and hopefully that can maybe help for fill the void for some of us who are really enjoying the arc, and now we've got this week gap where we're not going to get to see any My Hero. There's no Vigilantes next week. There's no like My Hero anime next week. There might be some announcements, but it's not like we're getting a volume release next week. So it's kind of a My Hero-less week next week. And so that might be a better usage of the stream, is like maybe moving it to that day. We can do some Q&A stuff, discuss some theories, how you guys feel about the arc, any speculations you have towards where the character's going to go, what you want to see out of the potential next arc. So yeah, just stay in contact with me. As always, you can hit me up on Twitter if you've got ideas or any suggestions for the channel. Always, I'm open to feedback, reading your comments. I try to, respond to you guys anytime you comment on the videos, because especially as a sub 100 subscriber channel, there's zero reason for me to pretend like I can't see you guys interacting with me. I think that's strange. Like, that would be weird for me to do. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you enjoy the analysis. This one isn't going to be as long as last week's, because I think that this was a lot more action oriented and there was a lot less speculation that I needed to have. But yeah, just let me know what you guys think. And as always, stay plus ultra. Anarchy out.